The CNN studios in Atlanta had seen their share of heated debates, passionate arguments, and controversial moments. Yet on that particular evening, when Van Jones sat across from Burkina Faso's young revolutionary leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, no one in the room could have predicted the emotional storm that was about to unfold. The program was billed as a hard-hitting conversation between a Western media voice and one of Africa's boldest new leaders. From the beginning, the air in the studio felt electric. The lights beamed down on the two men, cameras rolling, millions of viewers tuning in worldwide. Van Jones leaned forward with his usual charisma, his tone polished yet sharp, determined to challenge Traoré in a way that would expose perceived contradictions in his leadership. Captain Traoré, Van began with a wry smile. Many in the West see you as a symbol of resistance, but also as a man too inexperienced, too emotional, perhaps even too reckless to be trusted with leadership. Do you really think you belong at the table with world leaders? It was a question laced with condescension, a subtle dismissal cloaked in the language of journalism. The studio crew exchanged quick glances, sensing the tension. Traoré, dressed in his trademark military uniform, did not flinch. His eyes remained steady, his posture upright, his silence more powerful than words. He allowed the moment to breathe, as if he were weighing the question not for himself, but for all those watching who had ever been told they were not enough. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and deliberate. Belonging, he said, is not granted by Western approval. It is earned by the trust of my people, by the sacrifices of those who came before me, and by the courage to fight for a future where Africa is not spoken for, but speaks for itself. The audience in the studio gave a low murmur of appreciation, but Van was not satisfied. He pressed harder, raising his voice slightly, hoping to unbalance his guest. But Captain, he interjected, isn't it true that your critics accuse you of being authoritarian, of stifling opposition, of lacking the very democratic values you claim to defend? If you are so confident in your vision, why not submit to the same standards of transparency that the world expects from leaders everywhere? This time, the words carried a sting. The implication was clear. Traoré was being painted as a hypocrite, a strongman masquerading as a savior. For a split second, the young leader's jaw tightened. His silence grew heavier, almost unbearable. Then, Van pushed even further, crossing an invisible line. Maybe, he said with a half-smile, you are just another angry young man, desperate for attention, blaming the West for problems you cannot solve. The words hung in the air like a dagger. The crew froze. The studio audience gasped. It was a line designed not just to challenge, but to humiliate. And for a moment, it seemed as if Van had succeeded. Until Traoré leaned forward, his eyes burning with a mixture of pain, defiance, and unshakable truth. When I was a child, Traoré began, his voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with every word. I watched my mother boil water so we could drink something clean, while corporations from your world stole our gold, our land, our dignity. I buried friends who died not because they were weak, but because they were abandoned by a system that values profit more than human life. You tell me I am angry? Yes, I am. But my anger is not selfish. It is the anger of every African mother who has lost her son, every farmer whose soil has been poisoned, every child told they have no future unless they kneel before powers that see them as less. The room fell into silence. Not the silence of discomfort, but the silence of awakening. His words cut through the studio like lightning, raw and unfiltered, striking something deep in everyone present. He continued, his voice now resonating with deep conviction. Do not confuse dignity with arrogance. Do not mistake courage for recklessness. If defending my people makes me emotional, then I will embrace those emotions. For too long, we have been told to remain calm while our countries burn, to smile while our people starve, to applaud those who exploit us while condemning those who resist. That ends now. Van Jones shifted in his chair, his polished confidence faltering. For the first time in the interview, his eyes flickered downward, betraying the storm inside him. He had come prepared to win a debate, to prove a point. But he had not expected to be confronted with the raw humanity of a leader who spoke not for himself, but for millions. The tension reached its breaking point when Traoré paused, leaned even closer, and said softly, "You ask me why I belong here. I belong here because my people's blood is on this table, whether you acknowledge it or not, and I will not let their sacrifice be dismissed as the tantrum of an angry young man." The words pierced through the studio, leaving Van Jones visibly shaken. His lips trembled, his eyes began to glisten, and before he could compose himself, a tear rolled down his cheek. He tried to clear his throat, but no words came out. For the first time in his career, Van Jones, known for his eloquence and sharp questioning, was speechless. The cameras captured everything. The moment of silence, the visible vulnerability of a celebrated American journalist, the unshakable dignity of an African leader who refused to be silenced. In the control room, producers exchanged frantic whispers, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment breathe. Ultimately, they chose the latter, and it proved to be the most important decision of the night. The world needed to see this. Within hours, the clip spread like wildfire across social media. Hashtags praising Traoré's courage began trending globally. Millions of viewers, from Africa to America, from Europe to Asia, shared the video with captions like "Truth cannot be silenced," and "This is what leadership looks like." Comment sections overflowed with emotional responses, admiration, respect, even confessions of tears shed while watching. For Van Jones, the moment was humbling. In later interviews, he admitted that Traoré's words had pierced his heart in a way no debate ever had. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "you think you're challenging someone, but in reality, you're being taught a lesson." As for Traoré, he did not revel in victory. In a follow-up statement, he explained, "I did not speak to humiliate anyone. I spoke because the truth is heavy, and someone must carry it. I carry it for my people." The CNN exchange became more than just a viral clip. It became a symbol, a reminder, that true power does not lie in polished rhetoric or television ratings, but in the courage to speak truth, even when your voice trembles. It showed that dignity, integrity, and authenticity can break through walls of skepticism and prejudice. In the days that followed, commentators across the world debated the implications of the moment. Some hailed it as a turning point in how African voices are represented on global platforms. Others criticized CNN for letting the exchange become too emotional. But for ordinary people, none of that mattered. What mattered was the raw honesty of a leader who refused to let his people's suffering be minimized, and the visible humanity of a journalist who, for a fleeting moment, set aside ego and allowed himself to feel. When history looks back on that night, it will not remember it as just another CNN debate. It will remember it as the night Ibrahim Traoré transformed a hostile question into a universal lesson about dignity, justice, and the unbreakable power of truth. And somewhere in that studio, under the bright lights and rolling cameras, the world glimpsed not just a clash of personalities, but a reminder of what it truly means to be human.